She loves me. She loves me not. She loves me. She loves me not. It seems like a silly childhood hope that she would love me. But can you remember back to when you first met the person you fell in love with? I'll never forget it. It was the first day of my junior year of high school, and I got called to the principal's office. Now, understand, I was a good kid, so this was kind of surprising. As I made my way into his office, there she was, like a princess who had descended from the heavens, and all I could think at the time was, whoa, she's cute. Our principal asked me if I'd be willing to show her to her locker, how to open it, and then take her to her first class. And I can remember walking together down the hall to her locker, which was only 3 or 4 lockers down from mine. There was something new in my heart, something I couldn't explain. I mean, all the girls in school were crazy about me. Okay, I was a dork. But still, there seemed to be this new feeling. A crush was forming. Little did I know that as I showed her how to open her locker, that in just 3.5 years, I would get down on one knee, cue the romantic music. Thanks. I would get down on one knee in the mud as the sun was setting and it gently started to sprinkle and ask her to be my wife forever. Too bad she said no. I'm kidding, I'm kidding. Almost exactly a year later, at the ripe old age of 19, there we were, hand in hand, standing at the altar with absolutely no idea what we were doing. We said I do, and our lives together had begun. Little did we know that you actually needed money to live and that there was something coming that would change everything we knew about life and each other. The game changer. But we love the little rascals. Now I'm stuck in this dilemma because you see, I love my wife so much and yet I'm scared. I mean, our marriage, just like everyone else's marriage, is headed for one of two places: isolation or oneness. And the reason I'm concerned is because I've seen firsthand the effects that separated parents can have on children and how divorce tears through the bonds that families take so much time to build. And I'm flat out worried. How can I be sure that in 25 years I'm not going to wake up one morning, look over at my wife and no longer love her, no longer have a desire to make sure she's happy and cared for? What are the potential pitfalls that would get in between my wife and I's love for one another? I wanted to probe into this even further, so I went to a professional marriage counselor and I asked him some of the hard questions like, how can marriages just end after 20 plus years of being together? How can two people who were so much in love suddenly decide that it's over? I wanted to know. Here's what he said.
I would argue that values, so your commitment to your faith, commitment to your religion does matter in the sense that if you have a core set of values, for example, that values your marriage over just your personal growth, it's a big difference. I went to a personal growth seminar recently and somebody said that they didn't have marriage as a value. Well, if you don't have marriage as a value, you won't stay married. And so people in that personal growth seminar would be sort of led in the direction of, well, I'm going to focus on my own personal growth. And when you do that, you can risk your marriage. One warning sign would be the extent to which you sort of turn towards each other during the course of a day. Do you stay in touch with each other? Are you aware of what's going on in your life in a detailed way? The extent to which you don't want to be around each other, or you find yourself engaging in things that really would be risky or introduce in temptation, like internet type things, or whether it's social networking or whatever it might be, those are definitely sort of warning signs. But I'd say an overall feeling of mostly wanting to be away from your spouse is not a good thing. Kids are very much a complicating factor. I mean, one of the primary issues is, do you have a basic agreement about how to discipline? So that's really a critical one. And if you don't have that, that's one of those things that you have to negotiate until you get a clear agreement. Another part of that is whose responsibility is what. And that's a process that's kind of, always under negotiation to some extent, but clarity about that is really important. So if you don't address those issues, you're going to have a problem, basically. Kids can bring you together, but it's really a different kind of a thing. They don't bring you together in the sense of romance or that kind of a thing. They bring you together in a sense of shared values and commitment to family, and you both love your kids and you want the best for your kids. So it brings together some base values for you. But unless you protect time with your wife alone, so there's another thing about date night. I always have a date night with my wife, and I always suggest a date night. But unless you protect time alone with your wife, what happens is the kids intrude on you, and maybe you don't resolve arguments. Maybe they get in the middle of arguments and they want to make you calm, but you don't actually resolve it. So you have to protect time with your wife. Many marital conflicts are not resolvable, right? So Americans want to fix things, and if you can't fix it fast, then, well, I give up, right? Well, the problem is many marital conflicts you don't resolve. So the question is, well, what are you going to do? Well, the primary thing you have to do is focus on what you appreciate about your spouse, in spite of the fact that you're not going to solve that difficulty, or you're not going to address that problem or disagreement. So what do I appreciate about her anyway, in spite of the fact that we can't resolve this thing? How do I love her? What do I love about her? And when you do focus on those things, it brings your stress level down, and you shift your point of view. So you go over a period of time to get to a point where this thing seems like a really big deal, and it's a deal breaker for me, to realizing, well, it's a part of marriage, we don't agree on that one, but we have all this that we share and we love each other. Well, I think with people who leave a marriage after a long period of time is they didn't have that understanding, they didn't nurture that appreciation, and they started to get bitterness, and they lost that battle, and they lost that battle, and they lost that negotiation. Before they know it, they feel like they got nothing. They got no control, they got no power. They get bitter and they give up. So the way you prevent that is, when you're in the throes of these disagreements, is to shift back to, what do I really love about her? What do I appreciate about her? And how do I keep a perspective on that in the midst of this disagreement? Maybe this disagreement isn't as big a deal as our relationship is.
So after talking with Dr. Schinover and reading what God had to say, I came to some conclusions. For starters, I'm beginning to realize that a lot of the dissension in marriages today really originates in selfishness. I mean, if you think back to the last time you had a fight with your spouse, I'm sure that you'll find selfishness in the mix somewhere. Selfishness, if you think about it, it's exactly the opposite of what marriage stands for. In marriage, it's supposed to be about putting your spouse above yourself. And that's so easy to do when you're dating. In fact, that's the part of dating that seems so magical. The guy's thinking, I found the woman of my dreams. Everything I do is all about her. The woman thinks to herself, wow, this is my knight in shining armor. This is my man. But for some reason, you put a ring on each of their fingers, a couple of years down the road, all of a sudden they can't stand each other. And Satan takes that selfishness that forms in our heart and uses it against us. I mean, you've had the thoughts, right? I don't deserve to be treated this way. She has no idea what I go through at work. He doesn't love me. He doesn't even notice everything I do around the house. I can't take it anymore. I'm done. I'm out. Divorce has taken our country by storm, and Satan has successfully ripped half of our families to shreds. Affairs, abuse, mistrust, lack of commitment, pornography, lust, hate, bitterness, depression. I mean, these are the things that are standing in our way, ready to trip us up, and they all form out of selfishness. 1 Corinthians 13 is probably read in some form at most weddings in our culture. And I think that when we hear it, we're in agreement with what's being said, but it seems like when it comes to actually putting it into practice, we don't want to sacrifice and work together. So here it is again. I want it to hit you in the face, and I want you to listen like it's the first time you've ever heard these words. Love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. It does not demand its own way. It's not irritable. It keeps no record of being wronged. It does not rejoice about injustice, but rejoices whenever the truth wins out. Love never gives up, never loses faith, is always hopeful, and endures through every circumstance. You see, love's something that we all thought we were getting when we got married, and yet for some reason, half of our generation has somehow lost it. And the half that stay together, many are unhappy and unwilling to change. So where do you find this love if you just don't know where to look? 1 John 4:19 says that we love each other because He first loved us. On my journey, I've discovered a book and a movie that has had a big impact on my marriage. It shares truth straight from the Bible and yet makes it relevant for us today. It's called The Love Dare from the movie Fireproof. And I want to read a section for you. Check this out. Speaking on how love is kind. Wasn't kindness one of the key things that drew you and your spouse together in the first place? When you were married, weren't you expecting to enjoy his or her kindness for the rest of your life? Didn't your mate feel the same way about you? Even though the years can take the edge off that desire, your enjoyment in marriage is still linked to the daily level of kindness expressed. It's difficult to demonstrate love when you feel little to no motivation. But love in its truest sense is not based on feelings. Rather, love determines to show thoughtful actions, even when there seems to be no reward. You will never learn to love until you learn to demonstrate kindness. So if you're watching this and your marriage is on the brink of ending, I want to ask you some questions. What was it all those years ago that attracted you to your husband or wife? Has selfishness crept into your heart and taken control of your marriage? If you have children, how will the decisions you make change their lives? Just like this book, which I'd highly recommend for you to pick up, I challenge you to understand and practice unconditional love. It's time to take a stand for our marriages, not trade them in for new ones. Your wife, husband, and kids are one of the greatest gifts that you'll ever be given. Don't throw them away. I love her. I love her not. I love her. I love her not. I love her.